Money, power, fame. There are many factors that drive the motives of antagonists in media. GTA 5 is no different, so today we will be taking a deeper dive into the background and possible motives of the many antagonists in GTA 5. Thank you to my channel members, please like and subscribe for the fantastic YouTube algorithm, and let's dive in. First, we start out with Stretch. To understand Stretch's story to the best of our ability, we need to dive into his past as well as Franklin and Lamar's. The three grew up in a rough area of Los Santos known as Davis. Not together though, as Stretch is older than both Franklin and Lamar. This is a district full of crime and gang activity. In a place like this, being affiliated with a gang is not a choice for many, but a means for survival. Built on old traditional gang philosophies that essentially say the gang means more than anything. The three joined the gang known as the Chamberlain Gangster Families as a result. Stretch became a high-ranking member of the gang and attempted to take new members Franklin and Lamar under his wing, but Franklin didn't take the bait. Franklin has always had a bad feeling about Stretch, who was very traditional about gang culture. Stretch taught Lamar these ideologies, and as a result, Lamar started to tread down a narrow road. Stretch eventually got locked up for an unknown crime and was released at some point in 2013. However, while Stretch was in prison, he met some prisoners who were members of the Ballas, a rival gang also present in Davis. Remember this, as it will be important later on. Lamar sets up a meeting between Franklin, himself, and Stretch once he got out that was supposed to be a drug deal with a gang member known as D, who was affiliated with the Ballas and who Franklin and Lamar also kidnapped a couple of days earlier. D then gets hot very quick after Stretch mentions that he served time with some of the Ballas members. D talks about how the police are trying to, quote, put somebody on TV about gang intervention. Unfortunately, we couldn't really gather more from him as Stretch shoots him before he could say anything else. What I gathered from this is that D maybe thought that Stretch snitched in prison and Stretch didn't want Franklin and Lamar to hear about it, so he shot D before he could say any more. Regardless, the three escape and some time passes by. Lamar had wanted to take his street hustles to the next level and Stretch knew this. He told Lamar to buy some drugs from a person who lived on Grove Street, an area full of Ballas members. Luckily for Lamar, Franklin brought his new acquaintance Trevor Phillips to the deal as well. Trevor's an experienced drug runner and supplier, so he knows a thing or two about the industry. When the three meet the buyer, he offers a sample in which the dealer takes a bit from the top specifically. Trevor immediately becomes suspicious to this and asks for a sample from the other side of the brick, in which the dealer says that the three should go as Lamar said he wanted to. In a scuffle for the brick, it's revealed to be drywall and a shootout ensues after the fact. The three get away and Lamar thought that Stretch got played and so did he as well. Franklin saw the reality though, in which Stretch set up Lamar and Franklin to be killed as dozens of Ballas members were waiting for the deal to go wrong and take them out. In any case, some time passes by once again when Lamar is tipped off by Stretch yet again to buy more drugs from the Ballas, this time at a sawmill up in Paleto Bay. A desolate place, perfect to take someone out, but unfortunately Lamar was none the wiser. He gets kidnapped and Franklin and company later rescue him. Lamar's delusional once again though, thinking that Stretch didn't know anything about the setup, but Franklin is very vocal this time, telling Lamar that Stretch set him up to be killed once again. After the mission, the player can prompt a phone call with Stretch in which he says that Lamar learned a lesson and isn't concerned about it, so neither should Franklin. This is where that old gang philosophy comes into play. Lamar thought that the OG taught him a lesson and that he should just forget about it and move on. Franklin didn't take too kindly to this though and sought to take down Stretch once and for all. He sends Michael to get him as Franklin would be instantly made and the job goes well. Stretch dies at the hands of somebody he never knew on the same streets that he grew up on. Stretch was always causing problems for Franklin and Lamar, and because Franklin is so close to Lamar, his habits learned from Stretch would be difficult to work with if Franklin wanted a better future like he inevitably got in the contract. But that is where Stretch's story ends. He got out of prison just to die a couple of weeks later. And so goes on in the gangland of Los Santos. Next up we have Martin Madrazo. Madrazo is the leader of a local cartel and is an intimidating man overall. Madrazo has had various cases brought against him over the years as well, whether it be informants or civilians. However, all of the witnesses of his crimes happen to go missing just before their court date. Not a lot more is known about Madrazo prior to the event of the story, and I suspect it is meant to be that way. Madrazo is a mysterious figure to say the least, but he does contribute to the story a good amount. Michael pulls down his house in the Vinewood Hills, prompting Michael to come out of retirement and take another score that Trevor then finds out about, which then kicks off the entire story. Sometime later after he is paid off, he has Michael and Trevor kill his cousin Javier after talks about him testifying against Madrazo comes to light. Trevor then requests payment for his work immediately, to which Madrazo refuses. Trevor then takes a bit of Madrazo's ear off and flees with his wife Patricia. Michael knows that this can't go on for long and brings him a peace offering as a result, taking over a train carrying cargo owned by Merriweather and causing it to crash in Raton Canyon. A shootout occurs, but Trevor and Michael are able to escape escape with the artifact, and Trevor returns Madrazo's wife. Both agree that it is best to never speak to each other again, and the three go their separate ways. Madrazo also had a son with Patricia before the events of GTA 5. We would later work with his son to rob a cartel leader in the Caribbean known as El Rubio. The Madrazo family can commonly be seen inside the Music Locker nightclub inside the Diamond Casino and Resort, aside from Martin Madrazo himself. This is mostly all we know of his background as of now. He is an outlandish, wild character that when confronted by a similar personality has been shown to back down, only antagonizing those he knows feel truly intimidated by him. It's important to note that while Madrazo is an antagonist, he's not an extremely important one, but that wasn't always meant to be the case. There was initially supposed to be a heist to rob Madrazo's estate and steal a safe as well as a horse from him. This is also where the ability to ride horses was cut, as this was likely the only time in which you would need one to progress the story. This heist was insanely detailed, full prep missions were made and dialogue was even recorded as well, but Rockstar decided to cut all of it. They likely did this, as Madrazo would later come to GTA Online and assist us in some work, and most recently appearing in Money Front where he introduces us to Mr. Faber, who's supposedly a big deal in San Andreas. But that's where his story ends as far as the events in 2013's story. Madrazo has consistently appeared in GTA Online since then and has become a reliable supplier of work for our character, and we'll have to see how his story concludes as we near the end of GTA 5 Online. Next up we have the ONeal Brothers. The ONeal Brothers are a gang of hillbillies who seem to do anything that makes money. They are known rivals of Trevor Phillips Industries as they took over a contract between the Chinese and Trevor after their deal fell through. But let's rewind for a second. Trevor attempted to make a deal with a Chinese criminal organization that wanted to expand their drug enterprise. Trevor met someone named Chang Jr. and a translator and took them to his lab to show them his operation. However, they were attacked by a rival gang known as the Aztecas for an action Trevor had done previously against their boss. A gunfight then ensues during which Chang Jr. and the translator hide in a freezer to stay alive. Needless to say, they are not pleased with the experience and flag down a random car driving down the road to leave. The person driving this car had just so happened to be an ONeal brother, which is how the two groups met. After that, they of course take over the contract, and in retaliation, Trevor burns down the ONeal ranch and kills every brother he finds, although some have left before the gunfight. We will talk more about the Chinese later, but as for now, the remaining ONeal brothers are tracked down by Franklin of all people, in which he tails until they crash into Ratton Canyon. Michael then joins Trevor in a helicopter, and with the help of a thermal scope attached to a sniper rifle, they are able to find the brothers in the dense woods and finish them once and for all. And that's roughly where their story concludes during the events of GTA 5. Something a bit more sad, however, is that the ONeal bloodline was running for a very long period of time. Brothers being forced to do illegal activities or be outcast from the family must have been a rough life. Something I've always wondered as well is why there are no ONeal sisters. I always figured that maybe the sisters worked on a farm somewhere and the brothers did all the illegal activities, but the story never really tells us. The ONeals are also fairly rational people as well. When Trevor calls them about the Chinese contract, they say to come to the ranch and they can talk things out there. If the rival was someone a bit more sane than Trevor Phillips, they very well might have survived and kept the bloodline running. But that didn't happen, and all of them during the events of GTA 5 story mode have been killed. Next up we have Karen Daniels, or Michelle. Karen Daniels is a highly ranked agent working for the IAA or the International Affairs Agency. She got her start working undercover in Liberty City. Her mission was simple: take down a major drug supplier in the city by any means necessary. Unfortunately, GTA 4's main protagonist, Niko Bellic, happened to get introduced to her by his cousin's soon-to-be wife. At this point, nobody knew what she did for work, but Niko in particular had his suspicions. The first time he enters her apartment, he notices that all furniture pieces still had tags on them. Karen, or her codename Michelle at this point, then says she just likes to keep things clean. Niko should have known better, but maybe he thought that things were different in America, so he let his guard down. Regardless, Michelle intercepts a large quantity of drugs after Niko Bellic recovers them for Elizabeta, who was the major supplier of drugs for Liberty City at the time. This is where she reveals her identity as working for the government to Niko Bellic. Just about anyone who had any association with Elizabeta is also taken into custody, except for Niko and some company, because he had uses doing freelance work for the IAA. In exchange, codename agent United Liberty Paper would find an important person for Niko Bellic. Daniels is not heard from again in Liberty City, and she is assigned to work in Los Santos, where she has a new mission: to outcompete the FIB in receiving more government funding than the IAA. This comes in the form of kidnapping and torturing Ferdinand Kurimov, also known as Mr. K, as she believes him to be an associate of a businessman in Chumash who is suspected of working for a terrorist organization. mission. If she received valuable information, she can prove the IAA's use in government, thus getting the funding they desire. They question him at the IAA headquarters in downtown LS, where he is then captured by the FIB as they too want the information before the IAA. In short, Mr. K was never a member or affiliated in any way with any terrorist organization whatsoever. He was simply friends with the client he worked for as a technician. The IAA and the FIB both fail in their attempts to drive up government funding in this scenario, but Daniels manages to keep her position at the IAA. Later during the events of GTA 5, she is seen again, this time needing to get data from the Humane Labs. Utilizing the help of the player and their crew, she manages to get what she wants in the end, and comments how the IAA can get anyone to do their dirty work for the right price. The player then destroys the remaining evidence, and that is all. Karen Daniels has not been heard from since, but I have no doubt that she is still involved with the IAA, waiting for her next mission patiently. Next up we have Agent ULP, or Agent United Liberty Paper. IAA Special Agent codenamed United Liberty Paper, or ULP, is an elite intelligence operative for the IAA. He previously served in the US Army and has an incredible rap sheet overall, having conducted operations in Yugoslavia and busting drug runners on America's west coast. We first see him in Liberty City when we find out Karen is also a part of the IAA. Agent ULP seems to be higher ranked than Karen as well. He tasks Nico to conduct several missions for him in exchange for a person Nico is looking for, like previously stated. By the end, all operations with the IAA in Liberty City are complete, and he wishes Nico farewell in an email after completing the game. Fast forward a few years later and we see him again in Los Santos. Agent ULP is also rivaling the FIB to raise federal funding alongside Karen Daniels. During the raid on the Humane Labs conducted by the FIB, ULP manages to capture FIB Special Agent Steve Haynes, but he claims to be a double agent, so he is let go temporarily. He is then seen again at the meeting during the wrap-up, attempting to apprehend Steve Haynes and company because of the quote anti-American activities they performed. However, the fight is broken up, and although he does appear in the shootout wielding a pistol and can be killed during the whole ordeal, it is not canonical that he dies here. This is the last time he is seen in GTA 5 story mode, but he later makes multiple appearances in GTA Online, starting with the Doomsday Heist. He is first captured by a Russian military and is then held captive at the foundry in East Los Santos. The player then saves him from captivity and he is brought to a secure location. Later on, he requires an escort from a beach to an IAA hideout in which the player is successful in escorting him there. And that is it for his appearances in the Doomsday Heist, but he later appears in another update. He tasks the player with various missions after being sworn in as an IAA agent, and after the operations are done, we go our separate ways for the final time. Agent ULP doesn't appear a whole lot in GTA 5, but his appearances are nice and are surely for fans of GTA 4. I enjoyed seeing him, but I'm afraid it may be the end of the road for ULP. He's getting old and is likely retiring soon, or maybe already has. Next up we have Lazlo. Lazlo is a TV producer who runs the show Fame or Shame. He is first introduced to us in a mission where he tries to do some business with Tracy, or Michael DeSanta's daughter. This then kicks off a car chase in which his hybrid car gives out and Michael and his accomplice Trevor confront him. They humiliate him just as he does to other people and makes him promise that he never does anything funny with Tracy again. The thing about Lazlo is that Tracy pursues him in an attempt to get famous in Los Santos. If Tracy had given up sooner, then this would be the last time we heard from him, but it was indeed not. We would later meet Lazlo with Tracy once again, where he is mentioning wanting to do some more business with Tracy in exchange to get on the show. Michael hears this and gives him some piercings and an interesting tattoo to have Tracy on the show without doing nothing with Lazlo. He obliges as he kinda has no choice to, and he is never heard from again in story mode. It is important to note that Lazlo has history in the franchise even before the HD universe, but it's a long history and he wasn't an antagonist back then, so I feel it would be irrelevant to mention that here. His latest and likely final appearance, however, was in After Hours in GTA Online, where he talks with Tony and the player and occasionally appears in the nightclub. However, he is only on the floor whenever the club popularity rating is high. The actor for Lazlo unfortunately parted ways with Rockstar Games a good bit ago and is unlikely to return to the company, but I suppose you never know. Next up we have the Yogi Fabian. Fabian is a yoga instructor that Michael suspects is doing the deed with Amanda, but can't confirm. He periodically appears with Amanda, always hinting that he is having an affair with Amanda, but Michael remains calm until a yoga session he had with him and Amanda, in which he attempts to punch him and falls into his own pool, at which point Amanda and Fabian leave. Michael is effectively left without a family anymore, and the kids move away temporarily, having Fabian as their fill-in dad. The kids don't take a liking to him though, but the other option was Michael, who they were fleeing from, so they kinda deal with him for the meantime. While Michael rallies the family for a therapy session, he meets Fabian and Amanda, in which Fabian disrespects Amanda, prompting Michael to stand up for her. He smashes his head with some random chick's computer, and he leaves Amanda to tend to his wounds while he goes and picks up Tracy. Fabian is then never heard from again, and while he was a rather minor antagonist, only appearing during Michael's missions, he was a well-written character who I hated during my first playthrough as a kid. And don't ask why I was playing this game as a kid, it's not the point of the video. And that is precisely what an antagonist is supposed to do, make you absolutely hate them. And they succeeded here. Next up, we have Steve Haynes. Steve Haynes is a corrupt agent of the FIB who Michael ends up having to work for. He is a highly decorated agent, even trusted to command his own special unit within the FIB without supervision. Michael has to work for him involuntarily because Haynes knows the secrets of another FIB agent known as Dave Norton. Dave Norton helped Michael fake his death and escape his old life in North Yankton in exchange for a career boost in which he took down an infamous local robber to excel his career. Of course, Michael didn't actually die, but both made out of the situation with benefits. Haynes eventually found out about the deal after Michael robs Vangelico because the suspect description matched that of a famed bank robber out north, who should have been dead by now. He investigates Dave Norton's files as he was the one to supposedly kill Michael and finds out that he cut a deal with him to boost his career. He essentially could do whatever with both Agent Dave Norton and Michael DeSanta as he had valuable information over both of them. In the words of Dave Norton, my problems are your problems and your problems are my problems. He basically did just that, using Dave Norton and Michael DeSanta to assist him in multiple covert operations. This is where his story ties in with Karen Daniels, as he is also competing to raise government funding for the FIB. He would then take some of the funding to use for his own, and not for the purpose that funding is supposed to serve. He is a close acquaintance to Devon Weston as well, a cutthroat billionaire who is known to do many shady things. We'll talk about him later though. A notable mission that Haynes conducts is robbing a security car that is carrying government bonds that he suspects will be used by the IAA to fund a war between the gangs in Los Santos. The IAA will then leverage the war to demand a higher budget from the government, in which they would likely receive. The mission is successful, however, and the IAA are unable to receive the bonds. Haynes later plans another mission though. He wants to infiltrate the Humane Labs to steal a neurotoxin he believes the IAA is planning to release in a major city to stage a terrorist attack, in another attempt to raise funds from the government, of course. This might be the only time where I think Haynes made a good decision, but he definitely isn't a good guy. During the raid on the lab, he shoots himself in the leg to buy the team enough time to escape. The IAA later catch up to him, but he claims to be a double agent, trying to stop the thieves from escaping, in which he got shot. The IAA now start to suspect him of corruption, and he begins to become paranoid of being arrested and charged. As a result, he demands Michael and company break into the FIB headquarters to steal all information the Bureau has on him, and he promises to erase all files of Michael and Dave Norton after the job is complete. Thinking strategically, Michael just deletes the files himself though, and steals the Haynes files as well to please the agent. The raid is a success, but it might have actually worked against Steve Haynes. Higher ranked officials at the FIB start to suspect Haynes of the recent activity after all, because his specific files were missing. Haynes becomes even more paranoid after the fact and arranges a meeting between Norton and Michael in which he plans to frame both for the actions that he led. In a shocking turn of events, however, Agent Sanchez, Steve Haynes' right-hand man, is revealed to be working for a rival FIB unit in which he calls them to the area to apprehend Haynes. The IAA and Merriweather are also on the scene, at which point a standoff occurs between the many parties. Haynes escapes the shootout, and after the events that took place, wants Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, and Michael DeSanta all dead. Dave Norton convinces him that Michael and Franklin could remain quiet, but believes Trevor to be a liability, so he agrees to have him arranged to be killed. However, in the canonical ending for GTA 5, Steve Haynes is killed by Trevor, where he is shooting his reality TV show about criminals and the criminal underworld in general. After he dies, the FIB releases a press statement honoring Haynes and his actions in an attempt to cover up the operations he conducted so as to not tarnish the name of the FIB. Dave Norton also takes over his TV show, as it is good publicity for the FIB, as it shows that they are supposedly dealing with crime in Los Santos. And that is precisely the end of Steve Haynes' infamous life and career in the FIB. Next up, we have Chang Sr. Wei Chang is the leader of the Los Santos Triads. He comes from Yangshan in China and is an ambitious leader who wishes to expand the Triads operation even further. Particularly, he wants to expand into Blaine County. As a result, he plans to make a partnership with Trevor Phillips Industries, but as we know already, that doesn't go so well. Trevor kills the O'Neals, in which the Triads were negotiating a deal with, and Chang Sr. doesn't take too kindly to this. He vows for revenge at whatever price, going to extreme lengths to hurt Trevor Phillips. This comes in the form of kidnapping Michael DeSanta, who he thinks is lovers with Trevor. Of course, this couldn't be further from the truth, but it happens regardless. He holds Michael at a slaughterhouse and tells him it took a lot of money and favors to track down Michael. He recognizes that Trevor isn't coming, however, and orders to have Michael killed. This is where Franklin finds Michael's location and ultimately saves him. him. Michael talks about how Chang really wants Trevor killed but plans to use Michael as a pawn. In the canonical ending, however, Chang Sr. is killed by Franklin at a country club after Lester tracks down his son's credit card as recently being used there. This is confirmed by Tao Chang, Chang Sr.'s son, as during the online mission Strong Arm Tactics, he references almost being shot at the country club once the mission is almost over, as he was present on the scene of his father's death at the same location. Of course, he wouldn't say he almost got shot here unless the player chose option C, in which you kill Wei Chang. Tao Chang then takes over the Triad operation in Los Santos in his father's place. The Triads then try to take a more legal approach to making money in the form of the purchase and renovation of the Diamond Casino and Resort, so maybe it was for the best that Chang Sr. was assassinated. Next up, we have Devon Weston. Devon Weston is a ruthless, deceivingly bubbly billionaire. He made his money via the many stocks he owns, including being a major shareholder in Merryweather Private Security. Like mentioned earlier, he also has ties to the FIB as well, who assist him in his many illegal ventures. Because of his status and immense wealth, he has the three main protagonists do many operations for him, including stealing 5 high-end vehicles to sell to a Chinese client of his. After the operation is concluded, however, he refuses to pay Franklin and Trevor, stating that he will invest the money for them in his own company and pay them at a later date, which of course would never happen. Franklin particularly is upset and feels like he got fleeced of his work, telling Michael after saving him from the slaughterhouse of the situation. Michael says that they can't do anything until his work with Solomon, a movie producer, is done, as Weston is the one managing the relationship for the most part. However, Weston no longer wants the movie studio to exist. He plans to claim insurance on the studio in one way or another, but that requires the newest film from the studio to be unable to be complete. He has his assistant and second-in-command Molly Schultz take what is supposedly the last copy of the film to take offshore until Weston gives the go-ahead to destroy it. Michael of course doesn't want this to happen and chases Molly to the airport in an attempt to recover the film, in which she ultimately dies in a gruesome manner. Michael later finds out that there were many digital copies of the film and the chase of Molly Schultz was unnecessary. Devon Weston now wants Michael dead for what he has done, sending a squad of Merryweather soldiers to Michael's home in the Rockford Hills. Michael luckily gets to his home in time to save his family, who were home at the time getting ready to go to the red carpet of his movie premiere. Michael then sends his family away until he deems it to be safe to return, which could only mean one thing: taking down Devon Weston. Michael, Franklin, and Trevor then hold out in a foundry, with Lester tipping off Weston of the location, stating that the three are melting the gold after robbing the Union Depository. However, this is all an elaborate setup in an attempt to take as much firepower as they can to weaken both Steve Haynes and Devon Weston before they go on to attack both of them. The plan is a success. Merryweather and the FIB team now have limited resources, which now give the three wiggle room to take out the targets. Steve Haynes is of course assassinated at the Del Perro Pier, and Devon Weston is kidnapped at his estate, thrown into the trunk of a car, after Trevor takes out every Merryweather agent on scene. The three protagonists then rendezvous at a cliff off the Polito Cove. Weston then tries to plead for any chance of his life, offering the three stocks and money. The three are fed up with him and his antics though, and push the car he's in the trunk of off the cliff, where it flips over and explodes. Even until his final moments, Devon Weston tried to use his money and power to save his life, but he unfortunately met a group of people who didn't care anymore. They had the money and wanted nothing else. The interesting part about his death, however, is that no one really cared about it. It seems like everyone dealt with his persona only to their benefit. One important figure, however, contacted Michael after Weston's death. The man is known as Don Percival, who actually founded Merryweather. Percival didn't like Weston, only dealing with him for business purposes, and he was indeed pleased to hear that he was killed. Like mentioned earlier, Weston owned a stake in Merryweather, about 11% according to Lester, and his death allowed Percival to buy his shares back at a very low price. He told Michael that he is pleased to hear the news but to not test him any further, and we never hear from him again, and the same goes for Devon Weston. And those are all the main antagonists in GTA 5, but we do have some honorable mentions. These are antagonists that had a very minor role, but I thought I would still mention them regardless. Starting off with Rocco Pelosi. Rocco was one of the main antagonists in GTA 4's The Bow to Gay Tony, in which he loaned Tony Prince some money so he could keep his clubs up and running, but Prince didn't have the money to pay him off. He then constantly takes money from Tony and treats him poorly because he knows he can. Pelosi is also a made member of the Ancelotti crime family, which had a major presence in Liberty City at the time. By the end of the story though, Luis Lopez, Tony's right-hand man, has the chance to kill Rocco, but Tony prompts him not to, citing his connections to the Ancelottis. So Rocco remains alive, where some years later he ends up in Los Santos. He causes causes problems for Solomon and Michael by attempting to scam producers for a movie the two are working on. This movie would then go on to be known as Meltdown. Michael then heads to the site of Rocco's nightclub that is in construction and beats him up, warning him to not mess with the film or Solomon. Some time later, however, Rocco and an associate break into Solomon's studio, beating him up for sending Michael to his club. Michael fortunately witnesses the attack and chases Rocco and his passenger, where he ultimately kills both of them. I put Rocco in the honorable mentions because I honestly hate how he was killed, and he was a rather minor antagonist regardless. He only appeared in like 2 missions. Honestly, him and Johnny were treated terribly in the story, and they got killed in terrible ways, but I'm gonna cut myself off before I even start. Next up, we have Johnny Cleitz. Johnny was the main protagonist for GTA 4's DLC The Lost and the Damned. He appears in one mission for GTA 5 and dies in the same mission, in the same cutscene he appears in. Need I say more? I just don't know how they could kill a protagonist like this after he played such a major role in the story. It's the equivalent of Franklin being a GTA 6 and them killing him in the same cutscene he appears in. Like, that would be insane. I understand Trevor was enraged and emotional overall after finding out Michael is potentially still alive, which is probably the main reason why Johnny was killed. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I guess, but it doesn't make his death any better. He was an antagonist though, as he was the president of the Lost MC, which are a rival group to Trevor Phillips Industries, so I thought I would mention him here, but his story couldn't develop any more past this mission, which really sucks. He probably could have added a lot more to the Blaine County area as we leave it pretty quickly, but unfortunately, we will never know. Next up, we have Agent Sanchez. Haynes thought that he had Sanchez all wrapped up, but it is revealed during the wrap-up that Sanchez was a part of another corrupt FIB unit that was conspiring to take down Haynes. He called the team to the meeting between Haynes, Norton, and Michael to arrest all three. Perhaps the FIB wasn't happy with Haynes' progress in the fundraising, so they set up a new unit to take over. Of course, Haynes ended Sanchez's life during the meeting, and both units were ultimately destroyed within the FIB. Sanchez was always a cheeky guy, saying whatever because he knew he could get away with it because of his status. In a lot of ways, he was just like Steve Haynes, only slightly more likable, and I mean very slightly. He never really had much dialogue though, so it's understandable why his story was cut short. While some antagonists had a larger role than others in the story, all of them contributed in their own unique ways. Some got in the way of family and friends. Some made you work for them in exchange for a price that was never paid. Some were just simply silly and made for fun subplots. I'm really excited to see the antagonists of GTA 6's story and how they will affect Lucia and Jason's life, but we will have to wait for that. In the meantime, subscribe and leave a like for more content like this, and thank you to my channel members as well, who are Byron, Anawack, KOIAER, Karso, DuelingDiego, Nekoshi, Jacob, Agaro, and Joshua. I greatly appreciate my channel members. I appreciate you all. Please have a good day or night or evening. Hopefully the next video is a little bit quicker than this video. I know this video took a little bit longer to come out. I've kind of been sticking to like a week, but I'm kind of just rambling here, you know what I'm saying? Have a good day, good night. Next video will be out soon, hopefully, and I'll see you all later. And goodbye. Hey, look, hey, look. You better subscribe, because if you do not, I might cry. You better subscribe, I ran up the bands in GTA 5. You better subscribe, because if you do not, you might cry. You better subscribe, because if you don't, I might die. You better subscribe, I'm about to go crazy on the beat. You better subscribe, hey, wait for the beat to drop, ooh, you better subscribe, hey, you better subscribe, I'm out of breath. You better subscribe,